Crazy schedule again.
Yes, he is. Dr. Fuller was just asking, where is our good friend Will Wood? Will has a really crazy schedule right now. So he will be back, I believe, toward the end of July. Until then, I'm going to hope Dr. Fuller can stay with us and help us out on Monday mornings with the heavy lifting.
I will do what I can do with what I've got, sir.
Well, I greatly appreciate you having on this morning. We got a good show. Why is it not adding to the stage? Oh, there it is. I know folks are going to be jumping on. You have a hard out at in 1 hour, so we're going to jump into the show as folks will be jumping on with us this morning. I feel like we're having deja vu, Dr. Fuller. It was just a week ago, sir, that we were talking about Iran versus Israel. Now here we are waking up to this Monday morning.
Yeah, Operation, what was it, Midnight Hammer?
Sounds like a John Holmes movie from the 70s.
It kind of does. I mean, if you're trying to motivate 18-year-old troops to hit a beach, charge a machine gun nest, I guess that's the way to go.
And Midnight Hammer.
It does kind of, I don't know, fit the stereotype with the current administration. I think we got a lot of, bro culture going on there, so I think it fits this crew. But yeah, just a week ago we were talking about the potentialities for problems in that neck of the woods, and as prescient as you are, here we be.
Here we be. Will Parker is on, our good friend out there. Will, look forward to seeing you here in November in beautiful Tennessee. Dr. Fuller should be with us as well.
If I looking that way.
Yeah, so the 17th to the 21st, if you didn't get the memo, thank you to the 5 folks jumping on live already. We are going to be running, I say we collectively, me, Dr. Fuller, Will Parker, Justin Carroll, Mike Seeklander, the high-risk environment course. It's going to help you be safer in these banana times we're living in. Will Rhodes is on as well. So is Mark from Australia. Good morning, Mark. Ted is on from Mississippi. He's a coin member, as I believe just about everybody on this one is. Got 11 folks on so far. And if you want to find out if becoming a coin member is the right decision for you, click the links in today's show notes. Enough of the sales pitch crap. Let's get into today's show, Dr. Fuller. Operation Midnight Hammer, as you alluded to, man. 125 aircraft. Isn't that incredible?
Yeah. Yeah, and especially when you consider the entire Iranian Air Force is 600 planes?
Yeah, maybe, if you count the biplanes.
And the trainers. I mean, how many planes did we send on the distraction mission out over the Pacific?
Oh, God.
I mean, it's insane what we can do. And frankly, we should. We spend more on defense than, the next 28 or 30 countries combined. So we should be able to do stuff like this. But it's nice to see that it actually happens.
Right. And speaking of money spent, those GBU 57s, the massive ordnance penetrators, the MOP that we dropped, man, first time they've ever been used, we dropped 14 of them at a very expensive price tag, $500 million a piece. That's $7 billion with a B, folks, just to drop these massive ordnance penetrators, not counting the 30 Tomahawks we launched and all the fuel. I mean, this op, and again, if we stop Iran's nuclear program, I think it's the cheapest thing we could do, right?
Yeah, it's money well spent. But yes, I mean, the fiscal gating that takes place here prevents most countries on the planet from doing this. I mean, this is $7 billion on one operation, and that's just for the ordnance. Like you said, It doesn't count the fuel. It doesn't count the
Tomahawks. That's just the GBUs.
The Tomahawks launched from a nuclear submarine, right? I mean, it's insane that we can spend this money, and it doesn't bankrupt us. It doesn't knock us down fiscally. This is more than a lot of countries their annual defense budget.
Oh, 100%. Will Hollenbach is on. Mark Hamilton from Ontario, Canada. Jeremiah is on. Derek is on. Thank you so much, guys, for being on. Please like and share. So we hit 3 sites. I'm not going to go into too much about it this morning. I mean, if you've been watching the news this weekend, you got a little bit of idea what's going on. This is the actual photograph of the GBU 57, 30,000 pound bunker busting bomb, capable of penetrating up to 200 feet underground before exploding. Because these weren't around when you were in EOD tech, were they?
No, they weren't. And I'd be really interested to look into the fusing on this, because it's a 0.3 second delay fuse, as I understand it.
Really?
Which does, yeah, it doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're moving at the speeds these things are moving at, by the time they hit the deck, that's a lot of penetration. What's funny to me is, like most of our aerial bombs, better than half the weight of this bomb is the casing. It's just the steel it's wrapped in.
Exactly. I think the actual Comp B or whatever the hell's in this thing is like 5,000 pounds, maybe.
Yeah, it's
a lot of steel.
It's a lot of steel. It's an awful lot of steel. And I would suspect, Comp B is what's typically put in these in our air bombs. I would suspect there's something with a little bit higher, what they call brisance, something that hits a little bit sharper. Think of the difference between a shove and a reverse punch. In terms of brisance, a higher brisance rating is going to be more like the reverse punch as opposed to a shove. So if you're doing quarrying work and you want to shove half a mountainside down so you can go through it and look for copper or lithium or whatever it is you're searching for, you'll use a low brisance. It won't shatter the rocks into gravel. I would imagine this has probably a good combination of both, because you want to shatter the concrete that you're dealing with, but you also want to shove it all over the place. So,
any guess, Dr. Fuller? Patent or something else?
There's probably maybe some RDX in there. I mean, I would really be interested in looking into that, but I'm kind of geeky that way. So, and I'm sure it's classified at the highest levels.
Matt is on from Tulsa. Johnny King is on from beautiful Kentucky. Jay is on out there in Hawaii. Good morning, Jay. It's awful early out there. Jay's one of the OGs of the American Warrior Society, coin number 188. Good morning, Jay. It's always an honor to have you on this morning, sir. Here's a look at Fordo.
This is the before photo, right?
This is the before, yeah. 54,000 square foot in size, contains 3,000 centrifuges. And that was an interesting one for me, because I'm thinking, I don't know, a couple dozen, maybe 100. We're talking about 3,000 centrifuges, and I'm sure they are working around the clock. Wouldn't you imagine?
I would imagine so. And 3,000, I wonder how many they had before Stuxnet hit them versus now, and I wonder how they've insulated them from a potential attack like that again. But that's an awful lot of centrifuges for civilian purposes.
Yeah. And that's another thing. I think they only need, and I'm not a nuclear scientist, I'm a retired Marine Corps officer, former cop, et cetera. Dr. Fuller's a retired FBI agent and former Army officer, EOD Army officer, to be very clear on that one. So a lot of this stuff we know from being in the region, and obviously we read, and it's our job to bring you guys the latest and greatest information. That's what we do. So all this is open source intelligence. Rich and Dr. Fuller have no inside baseball on this stuff. We're just aggregating information and kind of putting it out there. But this is Fordo enrichment plant. And as I understand it, I say all that to say, Dr. Fuller, that I have heard that enriched uranium needs to only be like less than 10% to be used as a fuel rod. So there's zero reason why they should be the IAEA catches them at 60%, well on the way to 90. These centrifuges have no real purpose. Secondarily, they have, if you're saying no, they're for purely enrichment, then why put them freaking under the ground like that?
Well, I'm sure that their response to that would be, well, because the hated Israelis, that the little Satan and the great Satan will come and try to derail our peaceful, purpose nuclear program, which is oddly the same thing the North Koreans used to say.
Exactly.
On their run up to becoming a nuclear power. So, I mean, look, it's obvious to everybody that pays any attention to this that they are trying to get a nuclear weapon, have been for a generation, and are purpose building these facilities to avoid things like us and the Israelis bombing them.
Let me say something too on that. Thank you. Sarah May is on. Glad to have you on. She's from the beautiful shores of Lake Superior. Johnny King says could have dropped some CBs on some D9 dozers. Yeah. Here's the thing. So we just talked about, you don't need this level of enrichment. Number one, you don't need to put them that far underground. Number two, you're never going to have a space program. So why are you making these ballistic missiles? You're trying to get to outer space. You're really trying to convince us you're trying to launch satellites? No, there's one purpose for all this, and it's not a good purpose. which is why you have these smoking holes in the ground as the after shot, right, Dr. Fuller?
Yeah, that's true. Now they dropped 14 and they hit 3 sites, but as I understand it, one site only got hit with cruise missiles. Is that true, or is that, am I?
Yeah, we got some pictures of that here in just a second, but you're absolutely correct.
So imagine the damage that let's just say they gave 7 to each one. 7 of these things on each site. I just don't see, and you know how the military thinks, right? What do we used to say? P plus M equals E. Plenty plus more equals enough. You know,
that's right.
The minimum is 4, and that's, some general and someone went, hey, let's throw 7 in there. It's just be redundant, and you have to build in redundancies because you don't know if the aircrafts are going to have malfunction. You don't know if the device is going to function as designed or not. So you have to have built-in redundancies. But if all 7 of those things hit as well as they claim they did, and they all functioned as designed, I can't imagine there's a whole lot left there other than, gravel suitable for paving your front yard.
Yeah. That's a great freaking point. Tony is us. Good morning, folks. Ted says you need 3% for commercial fuel, unlike the Navy reactors, which is a higher level of enrichment. And maybe they want to convert some of those diesel subs they got. They got 20 diesel subs convert. I mean, I'm serious. I mean, imagine an Iranian nuclear sub that could traverse the world underwater. That doesn't scare the hell out of you. Will Parker says, one video I watched yesterday about this bombs is that one bomb may lead to another follow down the same hole. Yeah, you could see the close proximity of those holes, and the one in a triangle formation, the lower part of the screen, is pretty impressive.
Yeah, and fun fact, we have the technology to actually drop them in the same hole.
Yes,
and that's what allows you to not have to carpet bomb cities like we did in World War II. Here's a fun fact for you. B-17s, by the end of World War II, had a max carry capacity of about 8,000 pounds, 8,000-pound bomb load. These B-2s have an unclass capacity of 40,000 pounds, but they also, in the same breath, say that each of them carried 2 30,000-pound GBU-57s. That's an insane amount of weight.
Plus it is an insane amount of weight. Insane. Was that 30 tons?
They're 30,000 pounds of whack, and you got one bomber dropping 30,000 tons of ordnance. That's insanity. Yeah. And you can't see it coming. You can't see it going.
Oh, no. And here's Isfahan, which, of course, this is the before photograph. And then here's after the Tomahawks got done with them. Mm-hmm. So, again, no need to punch holes in the ground here. But, I mean, they just – in whatever was in the lower right, if you look back, the before – look at the after photo, Dr. Fuller, of about the 5 o'clock position on that slide. Yeah,
that's the Tomahawk Urban Renewal Program at work right there.
Exactly.
That's and you remember the video from the first Gulf War. You probably didn't see it like I did. I didn't see it till I got home, but there was the cruise missile, the video that Schwarzkopf was briefing where the cruise missile's like filming as it's cruising down the road. We've only gotten better.
Oh my God.
35 years later, they've only gotten more precise. And that allows you, as people get all upset about things, oh, we did this horrible thing. It allows us to put smaller rounds on target, lower explosive weight on target, because it's much, much more accurate, which at the end of the day is a lot better than just obliterating that whole site, which of course we could have done, or invading, dropping 82nd Airborne on top of it and fighting it out door to door.
Well, and that's what we're going to talk about right now, Dr. Fuller. A very prescient comment you got there. There's been several podcasts where former JSOC operators have talked about trying to solve the problem of these Iranian underground bunkers. And Sean Naylor's excellent book, Relentless Strike, he talks about how on all the IAEA teams, there's 1 or 2 Delta heavy breachers or operators. and they're on every one of them. And so can you spot him in this photograph? No. But they're there, and they're there. Like, how many steps are going down? What floor are we getting off of this elevator at, et cetera. Every bit of intel they can get, they're already collecting. And they've been working on this problem set for years, going back to Mike Vining, I think, on some of his podcasts. He's been on talking about this because he was, of course, an EOD tech that became a Delta operator back in the day. But you can't just drop JSOC in there to start blowing holes and getting down there, right? You're going to have to drop in the 82nd Airborne Division to provide top cover while they take a few days to cut their way in there, right, Dr. Fuller?
Yeah, if their defenses are anything like our nuclear power plants here in the States, yes. I have toured several here in the Carolinas when I was a crisis management coordinator in the FBI and when I was a bomb tech for potential response capability. And the general briefing at our nuclear power plants, and these are power plants, these aren't military installations, is look, until we tell you to come inside the gate, stay outside the fence. Civilian law enforcement, even the feds, they're like, look, don't come inside the fence. Because if we are assaulted, we're going to kill everything that moves. And I can tell you from having been in there, that's exactly what they're going to do.
If they have no powers of arrest.
No.
They have no powers of arrest. They only have the ability to use deadly force, period.
And those our nuclear power plants, I'm not giving away the store here, but they're very heavily armed. The crews that are there, they're not huge. I mean, you have friends that are in that line of work. They're not huge assault forces, but they are insanely well drilled. They are very heavily armed, and those buildings are built, with defense in mind. With there's bunkers, and they know where all the key places are that people have to get to, and they are heavily defended. I mean,
they have Dillons, bro. They have SUV mounted Dillons with miniguns.
Inside the buildings. I'm like, okay, if I have to come down this hallway, thinking like an infantryman, right? If I have to come down this hallway with a platoon, I've got to go 75 yards into the teeth of a machine gun bunker, and there's a guy in there with a saw. I'm going to lose half my guys just getting smoke on target before I can even start hitting this guy.
Yeah.
It's absolutely insane, the level of defense we have in our civilian nuclear power plants. So the idea that a military installation like the ones that we hit this past weekend wouldn't be at least as well heavily defended. Now, I'll grant you they're Iranians, so their level of quality is arguable, but it doesn't take a genius to sit on the machine gun and pull a trigger down the hallway. It really doesn't take you don't have to be George Patton or Erwin Rommel will make that happen. So as you point out, it would be a matter of cutting through walls, not using the typical high-speed avenues of approach, and it would take time.
Yeah. JSOC wanted to spend, I think it was a couple of years ago, about $15 million to build a dedicated training facility where they could practice raiding these kind of hardened facilities. Because, I mean, look, North Korea has them, Iran has them, China has these deep underground facilities. Of course, obviously we have them, but Michael Gentili reminds us, sadly, their major weapons system is crazy zealots conditioned to believe killing is an expression of ticket to paradise. Yeah, man. I mean, a lot of people don't remember, Dr. Fuller, the Martyr Brigade or whatever they call these children that would walk in front of the tanks during their Iran-Iraq war. I mean, that's the kind of weapon system they have, right?
And we've fought this level of zealots before. I mean, the Marines and the Army spend an awful lot of bodies going through the South Pacific. And every battle you read, it's just suicidal. You couldn't get them to surrender. They just died. You had to kill every one of them. So we've fought that kind of enemy before. We know how it goes. So clearly, if you can send steel other than flesh, that's the best idea. It really is.
No, I totally agree with you, man. Of course, let's back up. We got ahead of ourselves. We talked about Operation Midnight Hammer, and that's about all I'm going to cover on it. If you want to look at it, the administration is very happy to explain to you how successful it was, and it really was. I mean, it's incredible what we can do. If you look at the failure of Desert One and stuff like that relative to this masterclass and surprise, speed, stealth, all that stuff. But October the 7th, Hamas attacks. And I wanted to put it in context. Everybody says, well, they took 250 civilian hostages and they killed 1,200 Israelis. And here in America, we go, well, that's crazy, 1,200. But if you look at it relative to the population in Israel, think about 41,846 Americans being killed in one freaking day. That's what happened in Israel. Well, the Israel population is only 9-ish million people. So when you say 1,200 people got killed, that's 41,000 Americans. How pissed off would we be, Dr. Fuller?
Proportionately speaking, it's a big number. And look what we did after 9/11.
Right.
I mean, we toppled two governments. We invaded two countries over that, and gotten shooting wars elsewhere in the world too. Lower scale, smaller scale, but we went all over the place looking for people.
Yeah.
I think it speaks well of us that we didn't just turn a couple of these countries into glass.
True.
The fact, and I don't think every country on the planet would be capable of that level of restraint. But yeah, it's a big deal. And oh, by the way, this wasn't a one-off, right? This was, October 7th was not a one-off. Hamas has been in charge of Gaza for 20 years?
Yeah.
And look what they've done. They could have established international relations. They could have, built industry. And I mean, I've been on the beaches on both sides of the Gaza Strip. They're beautiful, right? Mm-hmm. They could have turned it into a tourist trap. They could have really done a lot. And instead, what did they do? They honeycombed the place with tunnels. They set it up to fight, and they've just been exporting terror. And they've been doing it for generations.
It's as simple as that, isn't it? I mean, and they would have been the darlings of the world, Dr. Fuller. The darlings. Everybody would have been tripping over themselves to hand them barrels of cash.
Oh my God! Beyonce would be doing a concert there.
Yeah.
I mean, it would be. Yeah, they would just people be falling all over them to give themselves to give these guys money.
Johnny King says. I'm sorry, Dr. Fuller. Johnny King says your thoughts on an October 7th type of event on the U.S. due to retaliatory attacks by sleeper cells. We're coming at you, Johnny. That's a great point. We're going to talk about that here in just a moment. But, can you imagine 9,000 American hostages being taken? That's roughly what happened. And they're still holding 50. Now, Israel says we're pretty sure 27 of them are probably dead. But we don't know what we don't know. This is an interesting one too, Dr. Fuller. I wanted to kind of give you a streamed timeline of how we got to where we got. And you think back to President Trump in January, he signed all these executive orders, and then in February rolls around and he signs the Restoring Maximum Pressure on Iran executive order. And I'm kind of like, well, that's interesting. Where's he heading with this? And it looks like this is where he was heading with this.
Yeah. And people are like, oh, he's jumped into this war and this. Yeah, clearly. But this is not, again, it's not a one-off. This didn't happen in a vacuum.
No.
Right? This has been coming for a while. And look, this is not the first administration to tell them to knock it off. Right? Both sides of the aisle have done this. In a video I shared with you this morning, Hillary Clinton talking about, if I become president, I will attack Iran. Both sides of the aisle recognize that this is not a regime that we can allow to have nuclear weapons. Full stop. Period.
Full stop. Period.
I've seen
there's a whole lot of reasons. It's not just Iran getting one. Saudi's going to have one now. Jordanians are going to want one. Syria, everybody's going to have one, right?
Well, just to counteract Iran. And Iran has been very clear about how they're willing to export their version of terrorism to all of their regional neighbors. They want to be a regional power, which I think it's safe to say they are.
Sure.
But they're not a regional power that's building roads and schools and churches or mosques, right? This is a regional power that wants to topple your government and suck you into a caliphate.
Yeah, they could easily export the love of Allah if they were truly the religion of peace. They have opted not to do that. March the 7th, Trump sends a letter. I still have not seen. I don't know that they've ever made that letter public. We know some of the things that are in it. One of the things is, hey, serious consequences are coming if you don't make a deal. Read Trump's book, The Art of the Deal, from 40 years ago. The guy's a deal maker. He loves it. And he would love to get up there and strut and get the Nobel Peace Prize for cooking up a deal with them, because he may get one for the Congo already. But my point of saying this is on March 7th, that's when the 60-day clock started. Now, less than a month later, we're out there having negotiations with Iran. And as I understand it, Dr. Fuller, from the April 12 negotiations, Iran showed up with, this is what we want. And as I understand it, Mr. Witkoff, I think his name is, him and his folks look at, we can do this. We can make a deal on this. And then immediately, April the 19th, they start changing the tenor of the deal, right?
Right. And, how many times have you done that? I've had this experience in my own business. I quote a price to somebody and they don't bat an eye. Absolutely, no problem. And the first thought you have is, damn it, should have doubled that. But that's what that read like to me. Is like they said, wait, they said yes. Oh, tell them we want new car scent and the undercarriage, coated. Exactly. It would be comical if it wasn't nuclear weapons that we're discussing.
Exactly.
And a group of people that are more than happy to use them. I'm surprised they haven't exported what's called an RDD yet, a radiation dispersement device, where you can take fissile material and it spews alphas and betas and gammas, and you just place it somewhere. You put an RDD in a train station. You put it in Grand Central Station. You put it in somewhere in England where tons of people go by, and you just expose people to massive levels of radiation. You don't need a high yield for that. You don't need a detonation for that. You just need a chunk of fissile material to set down somewhere. And they clearly have that capacity, but they haven't done that yet. And I wonder why, beyond the fact that they'd probably get a nuclear spanking if they did it.
Yeah, they probably would, and rightly so. So fourth rounds of talks, man, everything looks like it's going good. Trump's saying, hey, I've offered them a deal. Looks like we're getting close. And then Iran says they would never give up the right to enrich uranium. All right. So then we end up with the fifth round of talks in Rome, May the 23rd, without a breakthrough. May 31st, IAEA says they've amassed a record amount of military grade uranium in excess of 60%. And then on May the 31st, the IAEA says that, on June 11th, we start evacuating our embassies of all non-essential personnel. The next day, IAEA declares they're in breach. On June the 13th, Israel attacks. So that's kind of how we got here. Again, last week, Dr. Fuller, just in comparison, so roughly the size of about a third of the U.S., maybe a fourth. Are they really a threat? We talked about this last week, but for those that weren't on last week, I just want to say, look, obviously you can see the humongous disparity between us and them. I mean, it's incredible. But even if there was less of a disparity, they don't have the expeditionary ability to put them anywhere.
Right. And that's a key factor. We have all this military power, and we can park it in your capital.
That's right.
Right. We can send it there and support it once it gets there. I mean, for those of us that were in Afghanistan, for example, was it Saturday, you got steak and lobster or steak and crab, king crab legs. As God is my witness, anywhere in the country. So I'm sitting in a fob way up in the northeast corner of the country, and I'm eating a steak and I'm chewing on a lobster that 5 days ago was swimming off the coast of Maine.
That's crazy.
It's nuts, our level of logistics. And, as we've talked about before, right? Amateurs talk tactics, professionals talk logistics. Our logistics is unmatched and has been since World War II. We don't talk about it near as much as we should. But we have a level of force that we can project into Tehran if need be. They do not. They would be hard-pressed to drive all their stuff across Syria.
Yes, that's right. Because of something you brought up last week, and that's they're terrible maintainers of equipment. And I'm talking about anyone in that region other than the Israelis. And they're not the best, but they're like you said last week, they're light years ahead of where they're at.
When I was stationed in Egypt, I had an opportunity to talk one time to an Egyptian armor company commander. And he was very proud of his M1 tanks. They were, first or second generation. They were older tanks for us, but they were cutting edge for that region. And he was very excited. And they had one of them out, and they were driving it around. And I said, "Where are the rest of your tanks?" He said, "Oh, they're all in the warehouse." I'm like, "Oh, okay. You get them out and run them and exercise them?" "Oh, no. They're all in perfect condition. We only, those are for in case there's a war." I'm like, "Have you heard of dry rot?"
No kidding.
Like, you got to run these things, right? He's like, "Oh, no, we don't have to run them. They're perfect. How long have you had them?" 3 years. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, good luck with that. It's like and that's one of the reasons the Germans lost in Stalingrad. They had that armored division that was sitting there waiting, and by the time they got turned loose, the rats had gone in there and chewed up the wires and stuff like that, and they were dead. Yeah. Couldn't function.
Yeah, seems counterintuitive, but you got to run them to keep them running.
You got to run them to keep them running, folks. So I think it was yesterday, Dr. Fuller, Iranian parliament allowed or voted to block the Strait of Hormuz. Now, of course, that has to go before the Supreme National Security Council there in Iran. I almost said Iraq. In Iran. I'm a deja vu, right?
Here we go again.
Yeah, here we go again. Secretary Rubio said on Sunday, if they do that, it will be another terrible mistake. It's economic suicide for them if they do that. And we retain options to deal with that. But other countries should be looking at this as well. It would hurt other countries' economies a lot worse than ours it would be, I think, a massive escalation that would merit a response, not just by us, but from others. Let's be clear. It ain't going to hurt us a bit. As we're going to take a look here in just a second, most of that oil is bound for the Asian markets, and most of it's going to China. Let's be clear.
And to me, this read like they're getting a rubber stamp from their parliament, so they can say, anything we did is legal. We passed laws, and we talked to parliament. We're not fighting unilaterally. I guess that gives you a patina of legitimacy. I agree with you. Closing the Straits of Hormuz, one, they can't do it. They lack the military force. And as soon as they try, all of their ships are going to get flattened. Nobody's going to put up with it. The Europeans are way too dependent on that oil. And their ghost fleet is out there too. And something I don't know that we've talked very much about is that fleet of oil tankers they have that are not, they don't have their pings set up, like they don't have an IFF system, whatever it's called for ships, whereby we can track, everybody can track where these ships are. And they've got a ghost fleet of, 250, 300 ships that are running their oil out of the country and off to mostly Asian markets. Well, they shut the Straits of Hormuz. What's going to happen? Well, everybody's Navy is going to show up, right? And then all of a sudden your ghost ships aren't getting through. And to Secretary Rubio's point, it's going to economically strangle you.
It's stupid. I mean, the more at first I was like, "Ooh, that's not good." But the more I looked into it to build today's show, I'm like, "This makes no sense that they would do that. It would kill them economically." I mean,
and they'll lose all those islands, right? The first thing's going to happen, someone's going to go in there and snatch all those islands away from them because they're going to be launching from them, their ships and missiles and what have you. And then there'll be probably a military exclusion zone, or however we're going to term it, and we're going to land in Iran. We're going to push them back 50 miles or whatever it is. And when I say we, I'm talking about Western nations. I don't think the Chinese will come to their aid because they're like, hey, we need our gas and you're not pumping it because you closed the straits. So I don't think the Chinese are going to leap onto that. Plus, at this point, they've got to be realizing they're backing a loser here.
Yeah, but I heard it. Now, this is unconfirmed reports, but I heard it maybe 10 minutes before we jumped on that. I forget the number of planes that landed in Tehran from China yesterday. So are those envoys, are they saying, hey, look, you can block all the ships you want, but if it's got the HMS Sarah May coming on the side of it, you better let that one pass. The HMS TC Fuller, that one gets to go. You can play games with the rest of these clowns, but you keep your paws off our oil and you can do whatever you want. Now, what's interesting here, I think of the Strait of Hormuz and I think, okay, there's roughly 30 clicks from side to side, plenty of room to maneuver. Not so much, man. It's about about 2 miles wide where you can actually get ships through there. There's just enough room for one to go in and just enough room for one to come out safely. And like I said, approximately 84% of that oil and liquefied natural gas is going to Asian markets, with China, India, Japan, South Korea accounting for about 69% of it. So, and this kind of speaks to what I think it was Johnny King brought up a little while ago, as far as sleeper cells. And this also talks to the fact that what if one of their subs or some other actor could get over here? Look where our strategic petroleum reserve and refineries are located. Pretty target-rich environment, right on the coast. You don't have to fly missiles that far to wreak hell on us.
True. It's a good thing that it's real tough to screw around in that pond without us knowing about it.
Yeah, the Western Hemisphere is ours for a reason. And there was when the Titan popped underwater off the coast of Newfoundland and imploded. This little thing about the size of an SUV imploded off Newfoundland, and we picked it up, the sound, 300 miles away.
Have you watched the documentary on that?
I did. It was outstanding.
That's just
what a clown show.
Man. Ego. He gets you in trouble every time.
Yeah, the hubris on that guy, man. It's well worth watching. But I mean, I thought of Icarus the whole time. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's well put. Yeah. So the sleeper cell thing, did you want to talk about that now, or do you want to?
Let's come back to that when we talk about the way Iran can respond. I just wanted to kind of talk about the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. You heard Will and I and Dr. Fuller bitching about it all the way through the Biden administration when he sold it off at $96 a barrel. And I don't know what the hell we're supposed to do with this money. We could have printed it. We didn't need to sell it to get it. It's just stupid. But we're down to We only have an equivalent of about 19 days in there. We're about half capacity right now where we can be. So I thought, okay, well, 19 days, that's not good. But then I dug in a little bit further. The maximum total withdrawal capacity of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve is only about 4.4 million barrels a day. So it'd actually take about 90 days to use up our entire inventory. And that means gas prices will be, $30 a gallon or some astronomical price.
Yeah. And that's and that consumption rate, I'm wondering if that's a wartime consumption rate or if that's a peacetime consumption rate.
Good question.
We would pull that it would last 19 days in a peacetime environment, provided you could get it all out of there.
Well, to your point, that's a great point, Dr. Fuller. Now, if you can only pull 4.4 million barrels a day out of these deep, cavernous strategic petroleum reserves, these aren't just sitting on the surface. These are way, way, way underground. Don't think that mom and pop get it to go run to, it's going to go to keep the B-2s flying, right?
I mean, that's going to be the first priority is the military. So buy a bike, maybe
not a bad
buy
idea.
a bicycle. We have them near my house, and might be money well spent.
Yeah, Donald Green is on from Occupied Virginia. Good morning, sir. Ted says avoiding a Middle Eastern arms race of nukes is essential. Yes, it is, and that's why I support this. What we've done here for a whole lot of reasons. The Iranian submarine force, we talked about it. I mean, they're diesel powered subs. You gave us an amazing breakdown on this the other day. But can they block the strait? You say no. I say maybe.
I say they can do damage, but I think the repercussions from that will be catastrophic.
Well, and here we go. We have an example of when they didn't even try to block it. They were playing FF games with Iraq by throwing 150 mines out in the strait back in 1988. And that was all fun and games and hee and ha until one of the damn mines struck and severely damaged the Samuel Roberts. And of course, this led swiftly to Operation Praying Mantis, which was a giant ass kicking of the Iranian Navy. You can see here the casualties and losses. We lost 2 killed in a helicopter crash. Still don't know what happened, but we sunk one of their frigates, one of their gunboats, 3 of their speedboats. We crippled a frigate, 2 oil platforms destroyed, because Iran does have oil platforms in that area. So you want to play games? We'll leave them in smoldering wrecks, and shot down one of their fighters. So yeah, man. And that was just a 1-day destruction of the Iranian Navy, man. So you want to play that game? Go ahead.
We parked the 7th Fleet in the Med, and we parked another fleet out there by Diego Garcia. And yeah, the repercussions for choking off the Straits of Hormuz would just be bad for them.
Real bad.
So yeah, could they sink a surprise attack and attack a whole bunch of ships at once? Absolutely. But as is often said in many, many places, don't touch our boats.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you just a quick thing on this. So there was the two oil platforms. So taking down a ship is VBSS, Visit Board Search and Seizure. Well, there's an acronym for how you take down an oil platform. It's called GOPLAT. The Marines were given one oil platform to take down. The SEALs on the Marine Amphibious Task Force were taken to take down another. As I understand it, a little inside baseball, they were supposed to order 155 armor piercing rounds that would just kind of punch holes in the deck and just kind of like rattle everybody on the oil platform that something's coming, but not really damage anything. They ordered the wrong ordnance and blew it to pieces, and the SEALs couldn't even land on the oil platform. Whereas the Marines did not, and they were able to take theirs down. So there you go.
Well,
just saying.
It was a warning shot. We destroyed one. Now everybody else is warned.
Exactly. Well, they're warned, all right. So yeah, Operation Praying Mantis. I also wanted to say, when you think Iran, the oil fields ain't everywhere. The green is where their oil fields are located, and the red is where their natural gas is coming out. So again, you want to play games in that area, you can see the U.S. presence in the region. We're really close. Probably not a good idea. So I think I just don't understand what they have to gain by doing this.
Yeah, I don't know. Did you ever read the book The Mouse That Roared when you were a kid? Little tiny country, The Mouse That Roared. It's about a little tiny country that is economically strapped, real hard scrabble kind of thing. They come up with a plan to improve their lot in life by declaring war on the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And so they attack, and of course they lose instantly. And then all of a sudden they just get showered with humanitarian aid and food and loans for rebuilding. All of a sudden they're fat and happy. Maybe that's the plan here. Hey, look, we'll get slapped around a little bit, and then we'll suddenly say, okay, Uncle, I don't know. I honest to God, I have no idea other than insanity, right? I mean, we can always factor that in there. Religious zealots, they just think God's on their side, and they're just going to do what they're going to do. And look, you've spent a lot of time in the Middle East. I've spent a lot of time in the Middle East. They really don't think the way we do. And one of the big things is if you say that you're going to do something, it's the functional equivalent of actually having done it with these folks, right? Mm-hmm. You remember the line of death off of Libya, right?
Yeah.
It played so well amongst the Arab nations. Like, oh man, he's a badass. He fought the Americans. No, he didn't. He didn't fight the Americans. And so this posturing for the Iranians plays well, because if you're willing to, puff up on the Americans, then you turn around to Oman and say, hey, we want favorable trade agreement with you. Well, Oman's like, oh, Jesus, this guy fought the Americans and, beat them to a standstill. Maybe that's it. They're trying to raise their profile and become players on the national stage, just like Kim Jong, right? You rattle sabers, you make a lot of noise, and all of a sudden people are taking you seriously in the great capitals of the world. Maybe that's the plan. I don't know, but they're not going to win militarily. They simply can't, for all the reasons we've talked about. Can they make asymmetrical life difficult for us? Absolutely. Is it
absolutely. Sarah, Dr. Fuller, she says, our response to the USS Wisconsin being attacked comes to mind. I'm not unaware of that, Sarah. So give us a little bit of info.
Is that the ship that the North Koreans hit with a artillery shell?
I don't know. I was thinking that. Well, the Pueblo is the one they seized. I'm not sure.
There was a battleship that the North Koreans, shore-bound artillery, and I can't recall the name. Maybe it was Wisconsin. They just lobbed an artillery shell out at it and hit the deck. They actually hit the ship underway, and splintered the wood and scratched the paint. And we all know how the Navy feels about that sort of behavior. So it was a U.S. battleship. So she's like, "All right, you want to FAFO? Let's do it." And they gave them a broadside, and not only wiped out the artillery, but changed the topography, right? 9 15-inch guns hitting the same place at the same time. So that might be what she's talking about. I remember that was an incident. I just don't recall the ship.
Well, the Wisconsin is a battleship, so that could definitely be it. Michael Gentili says, wasn't that turned into a Peter Sellers movie?
Might well have been.
Let's see. Don Bothwell says, I don't think that their threat to close the straits is about a military objective as much as it would be an economic objective. They could drive the global price of oil pretty high. That spreads pain all over the globe and gives them some economic boost because the equity in there also, but again, it's like you do that, and not only were you pariah before, but now you're bringing in a lot of pissed off players that were going to sit this one out. So,
and really, what other options do they have? What other hot buttons can they push? Because their nuclear hot button just got severely degraded. So what else do they have? You mess around and we're going to invade Syria. We're going to disallow skiing into Brits. I mean, I just don't really know where else they can really shove people around.
Yeah. Sarah says, yeah, that was it. We erased the hill. Our neighboring ship advised temper because the response was so strong. But I love it.
You should look into that. It's a really great story.
Well, yeah. I mean, I love the scene from The West Wing where Jed Bartlett, I think is his name, played by Martin Sheen. The Iranians, I think it was, shot down one of our a mercy flight of doctors going to help people, and he's like, no, they're saying, well, here's a proportional response or operation, whatever. It's like, what's the virtue of a proportional response? And it's a great scene. You familiar with that scene?
Yeah, I've seen that scene. Yeah. I didn't watch the show, but I have seen that.
Yeah. He's like, anyway, I won't steal it. I highly encourage you to go watch it. So let's talk about, and I only included the nuclear armed nations here. Everybody else can chatter all they want. It's irrelevant what their thoughts and feelings are about it. But who are the guys and gals out there that have the nukes? Let's talk about this. So obviously, the United States We did it. No problem. Russia, not good. And I'm going to drill down on why and exactly what they said about it. China strongly condemned it as a serious violation of the UN Charter and international law. That's not good. France, of course, green light, good to go. United Kingdom, good to go. Pakistan, this is an interesting one. Obviously, they condemned it, and the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Pakistan affirmed Iran's right to self-defense. And this is going to play into, I think, some of the other folks in the region. Of course, Pakistan is a nuclear armed nation. They're a Muslim nation. They're saying self-defense. They have the right to self-defense. Maybe they give them something to help them with self-defense. That'd be a bad
also
call.
that they don't mention our right to self-defense or Israel's right to self-defense.
Yeah. Well, that's the Bush doctrine, right? The the preemptive attack doctrine.
Well, it's very Machiavellian, just like on the last slide we were discussing. If you read Machiavelli, in essence, what he's saying is, look, you don't mess with other people. Just leave them alone. But if you're going to mess with them, win all the fights at once.
Yes.
Crush them utterly. Leave no stone atop another stone. Grind salt into the earth. Go full Carthage on them.
And he's right. I think the way I remembered, I could be misquoting here, but never do an enemy a small injustice. If you're going to do it, go all the frickin' way.
Or don't do it.
Or don't do it. Yeah.
And it's as true with interpersonal combat in a bar as it is with international combat played out in the Middle East.
Right. Gao says, of course, China will condemn it. Anything the U.S. says the Chinese are opposed to. So India, this is an unknown one. I could not find a response from the Indian government other than a condemnation of the rumors out there that are saying we allowed overflight, which I was like, we came from the East, as I understand it, and the coming out of the West was merely a diversion, but I don't, that's just open source. Israel, obviously, green light. North Korea, not good. We're going to get into that. What is Iran's actions, Dr. Fuller? There's rumors out there. There's a former intel guy that was on Sean Ryan saying that Iran sleeper agents, and he said this maybe months and months ago, they have brought man pads in here. Those are surface-to-air missiles. Think Stinger missiles, but whatever the Iranian equivalent is. That would be bad if they start shooting down Southwest Airline flights over Denver. There's obviously cyber. They're not really known for their cyber capabilities, but they do have them. This is something they could obviously do on the Strait of Hormuz. We're not blocking anybody, but as the ships go through the strait, their stuff gets all screwed up. So they got proxies, sleepers, economical things that they can do, dirty nukes, actual potential nukes. Now that we're on the topic, Dr. Fuller, what are your thoughts on Iranian responses?
Well, I think if they're going to respond, they're going to do it soon. And I think it's likely going to be asymmetrical. I don't see them launching the 13th Iranian one-hump camel brigade across Syria in a desperate attempt to strike Tel Aviv. So I think their most likely military response will be asymmetrical. Do they have sleeper agents in the United States? It'd been pretty easy to get them here in the last 4 years. So I think the only safe thing to do is to assume they are here. I will tell you, in the Bureau, when I was there, we took that sort of thing very, very seriously. We chased down a lot of those groups. And a lot of times we'd identify them and watch them. We wouldn't necessarily take them off and just keep an eye on them. And, so then whenever they met up with somebody, contacted somebody, tried to extend their organization, we knew about it. We'd penetrate the organizations with our own undercovers and with CIs, confidential informants. So we riddled these things. I mean, I remember when we were really going after domestic terrorists, the white supremacist guys. I had a CI in a meeting one time, and it was about 15 people met, and 13 of those 15 were working for some law enforcement agency in some capacity. That's how heavily penetrated they were, and there's no reason to believe that we wouldn't do the same thing to Iranians. So are there people here that they could fall into the category of sleeper? A safe assumption is yes. Did they, and we talked about this before, did they schlep man pads over the border on their backs? No, they didn't. It's just too risky. The downside repercussions are too high. Could they have smuggled them in other ways? Sure. I would expect that they'd have been launched by now, if that was what was going to happen, or that they will be launched in the next few days. So, I watched that interview with that analyst, and I kind of gave you my rundown on my thoughts on it. So I say it's possible. I don't think it's likely.
Yeah.
I think besides, it's too easy to just get people here and then arm them, right, with shotguns or rifles, and then cut them loose in a mall.
Look at the DC sniper. If they did something like that, holy cow. I mean, that was just two guys
Yeah.
and an old Capri running around causing havoc. I remember those days. They were terrifying.
That's actually the topic of I'm in the middle of writing a novel, and it's about actual trained snipers doing that.
Oh, wow.
And with some financial backing and some experience and some training. So anyhow, two guys that didn't know what they were doing, armed with a single M16. Look what they did to DC and the whole surrounding area. Imagine actual sleeper cells that are willing to die. Yeah, so it would be bad. Is it an existential threat to the United States? No. But is it a threat to? Can
it be incredibly disruptive?
Absolutely. And could it be a threat to our viewership?
Yes.
Absolutely. I would argue much more than a threat of, ballistic missiles going back and forth between Tel Aviv and Tehran.
Mm-hmm.
So keep your heads on a swivel, folks.
I tell you, and Michael Gentile has an excellent point. He says Iran is entirely out of the equation in nuclear arms when it comes to mad, mutually assured destruction. It has no meaning for zealot leaders. They will sacrifice all their people and die trying. Yeah, he's absolutely correct on that one. And that's why, we have had a strategy, obviously, of mad, but it's encompassed in something called escalation dominance. I will over-escalate. And that is something you got to watch for. And, the state gives our law enforcement a monopoly on violence in that I can use one level of force higher than yours in order to gain compliance. But let's shift back to something you said a moment ago, because when the FBI was running intensive counterterrorism and anti-terrorism, and they're running counterintelligence and all these things that they used to be incredibly good at, I'm terrified that this current administration's FBI is focused on violent felons. Isn't that the purview of local law enforcement? Why in God's name are they focused on that?
Well, it sounds good, right? I mean, Kash Patel can get on TV and say, we are going to, and this is a quote, we are going to crush violent crime. All right. 12, 13,000 FBI agents are going to jump into that pool. But again, as we talked about many times on the show, you have a limited number of resources. When you apply resources to one area, you perforce have to lessen the number of resources in another area. So the current administration has said violent crime. Well, as you point out, every local cop, every state cop, every tribal police officer, every TVA officer out there, every statey out there is after violent crime. They're out trying to stop violent crime. Mm-hmm. Throwing the FBI in on top of that, it makes it sound good, but do we really want nobody to work counterintelligence? Nobody to work? Because we're the only ones that do it.
Yeah, the state ain't doing it. Local is not doing counterintel. Are you kidding me? Come on.
Right. You're not chasing down a network of spies in DC that has connection in New York City, Miami, Los Angeles, and San Francisco. It's just beyond the capacity for my local county sheriff to do that.
Yeah.
Right. And oh, by the way, there's political reasons not to do it, because the people in Seattle aren't voting for him.
Right.
Right. The people in York County are voting for him, and they want their cars not to get broken into, and they want the violent criminals kept out of here. And so somebody has to work these things. And of late, there was, we're going to crush violent crime. And then there was, okay, we're going to help with ERO removals of illegals. So the FBI has been drug into that, kicking and screaming. And largely in the capacity, from what I've been able to tell, from just, in essence, driving these people from jail to extradition sites, or to jail from arrest sites. Really stuff that's not in the purview of the FBI. Right. And now I have absolutely no doubt that, given the events of the last few days, the FBI is likely going to be said, okay, now we got to work these Iranians, and we got to be ready for a general war. When you can't keep shifting these things around like
exactly
that, it's bad strategy. The captain of the ship tells you where to put the ship. He doesn't tell the chief down in the engine room how to run the engine. Right. And you can't suddenly create, if you decide today that we're going to work the Iranians as an organizational priority, that doesn't create penetration into Iranian intelligence cells overnight.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to penetrate these cells, that is the work of years, and that is the work of years by trained, experienced professionals in doing that sort of thing. If you've never worked a counterintelligence case, I can tell you they are extremely technical, and both from a tactical perspective and from a paperwork perspective. Mm-hmm. Everybody goes bananas about the FISA court. I'm here to tell you, you have to deal with the FISA court. You're going to want to just smear peanut butter on the end of your Glock, because it's just maddening, the level of red tape and the things you have to jump through to get FISA court approval for stuff.
Thank God.
Yeah, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
But don't think that you can take a guy who was working bank robberies yesterday and gangs and take him today, and now he's going to jump in and be a FISA court expert. He's not.
Exactly.
And then you're going to end up with what we call IOB violations, Intelligence Oversight Board violations, and now you're getting even more tied up in paperwork that you shouldn't have been tied up with in the first place, and you're not doing the job.
No. Well, excellent point.
Right. You're not grabbing the people you want to grab.
Yeah, we're going to be doing a show on that, Dr. Fuller and I, real soon once we get past all the current event drama, because I look forward to having that conversation with you. Let's talk about Russia's response real quick, Dr. Fuller, because I only have a few more minutes with you. Yes. Dmitry Medvedev, the former Russian president, now deputy chairman of the Security Council of Russia, said on Sunday, just yesterday, quote, "The enrichment of nuclear material, and now we can say it outright, the future production of a nuclear weapon will continue." And then he went on to say a number of countries are ready to directly supply Iran with their own nuclear warheads, period, full stop. And that got my attention.
Yeah, he said the quiet part out loud. And this feeds directly into what you and I have discussed on the show multiple times. This can get out of hand very, very quickly. Very quickly.
Yeah.
And the idea that,
they get Dr. Fuller. There's 60%, which has got to get that 90% and work on our ballistic missiles. Now, here you go. Here's the nuke. Here's the missile. Go forth.
Right. Now, why would you do that? I mean, obviously, because you want a proxy to fight a nuclear war for you. But the idea that you're going to give a nuclear warhead to a country like Iran and then they use it, the idea that you're not going to be on the receiving end of that response is ludicrous. You know that if a Russian nuke, and of course, we can track the radiation off all of these things and figure out where it's from. A Russian nuke goes off at the behest of an Iranian ruler, we've got a real existential problem for Russia at that point. Mm-hmm. And the Russians aren't the only ones saying stuff like this, right? I mean, that knucklehead in North Korea is doing the same thing.
Well, that's a great segue. Let's talk about that. As of yesterday, it looks like North Korea has reportedly offered to supply nuclear weapons to Iran as a way of settling things in the Middle East, according to intelligence leaks. Not officially confirmed, but I'm telling you, quote, "If North Korea's nuclear offer to Iran is real, it marks one of the most dangerous geopolitical shifts in modern history. It blurs red lines, invites retaliation, and threatens to transform regional conflict into a global nuclear crisis. The world may now be standing at the edge of a far more volatile future." And that's according to World Impact Media. Guile says, "You guys think we'll have another Iraq or Afghanistan war, or worse, the start of World War III?" And that's probably a perfect place to lead today's discussion. But I also want to get onto something real quick. It's not just the Iranian nuke, it's the Iranian missile technology. Iranian missiles cannot get outside the region. Guess what? North Korean ballistic missiles can range all within the continental United States. So if Iran gets it, now they can range the United States. So let's take Giles' comment real quick for the last 60 seconds I have with you.
You guys think we'll have another? Oh, well, you like to hope not. I mean, we just spent 20 years fighting those wars. Spent a lot of treasure, a lot of lives. You really hope that we can avoid that sort of behavior again. I don't know. And frankly, I don't think that if we get into a shooting war on the ground in Iran, that it will just stay within the borders of Iran. I don't think that'll happen. I think you'll end up with a much wider war if the U.S. gets involved. Now, maybe if the Arab nations in the area get their act together and decide to unify and go beat up Iran, that might be a more of a them problem than an us problem. But I don't know. It's a very scary time. It's a very volatile time. As the Chinese curse says, right? May you live in interesting times. Well, we're definitely living in interesting times, folks.
And thank you, Dr. Phil, for being on today. I'll leave you with this final thought. The Iran strike really drives home how insane these district court rulings are. The president's legally permitted to drop 30,000-pound bombs on countries we aren't at war with, but is not allowed to terminate the employment of a U.S. aid worker, revoke DEI grants, or deport illegals. This is the banana republic we live in. And thank you for being on today, Dr. Fuller.
Rich, it's always a pleasure. I always enjoy interacting with you and your audience. And again, folks, these global issues translate into local issues. So the fight is coming. Be ready.